We are counting down the 10 most overlooked airplanes that savvy pilots trust. Machines hidden in plain sight and outperforming brand name Cessnas for a fraction of the price. From bonded wing speedsters that embarrass flight trainers to Orphan classics and fabric-bodied rockets, each entry on this list challenges the Cessna Tax and proves real value lies where the herd is not looking. Some offer luxury you would never expect, while others pack more capability into every dollar than any mainstream model. So, which sleeper airplanes made the cut, and which one takes the crown as the ultimate Cessna killer? Let's begin with number 10. The Grumman AA1 Tiger is the first punch in the face of the Cessna Tax. On paper, it is just another 4-seater with a 180 horsepower Lycoming, the same class as a late Skyhawk. In the real world, it is a bonded aluminum rocket that cruises at 135 to 139 knots, eating up 20 to 30 knots more than a Cessna 172 for the same fuel burn. The secret is in the construction. Instead of a patchwork of drag-inducing rivets, the Tiger's wing and fuselage skins are glued smooth, giving it the airflow of a sports car, not a cheese grater. Slide back the fighter-style canopy and you're sitting in a cockpit that feels alive, with light ailerons, a quick roll rate, and a view that makes any Cessna seem like a bus shelter. Taxiing is a rite of passage. The nose wheel swivels 360 degrees, so you steer with your feet and brakes, not the yoke. That spooks students and keeps the schools away, which is exactly why Tigers sell for a fraction of their trainer rivals. The American Yankee Association keeps parts and knowledge flowing, but any smart buyer pays for a bond line inspection before signing. You want more speed for less money? This is the first place you look, if you are not afraid to think like an engineer instead of a lemming. The Meyers 200 is what happens when an airplane is built for pilots, not accountants. Only about 135 left the factory, each wrapped in a steel tube roll cage and skinned in aluminum. This is not just marketing. Owners have walked away from accidents that would have totaled lesser airframes. Under the cowl sits a fuel-injected IO520 engine that produces 285 horsepower. That translates to cruise speeds of 165 to 175 knots, or just shy of 200 miles per hour. It leaves Cessnas and most Bonanzas behind. It did it decades ago. Meyers 200 airplanes set class speed records in the 1960s that stood for years. But rarity is a double-edged sword. You will not see one at the local pancake breakfast. And tracking down a door or a cowling means calling the Meyers Aircraft Owners Association or scouring salvage yards. Still, values are rock solid because supply is locked. Restoration projects do pop up. Sometimes they are found in barns, sometimes pulled from decades of storage. When one gets back in the air, it is usually to stay. For the buyer who wants unmatched strength, real speed, and a guaranteed conversation on every ramp, the Meyers 200 is the unicorn that never disappoints. You need to be ready to hunt for parts and to play in a very exclusive club. Piper's Comanche 250 is what happens when engineering wins, until corporate accountants pull the plug. With a 250 horsepower Lycoming engine and a laminar flow wing, this was Piper's cross-country muscle car, not a school bus. The numbers don't lie. Cruise from 155 to 160 knots, and with the auxiliary tanks you can carry 90 gallons, enough to skip the gas station while the Arrows and the Archers are still searching for a fuel truck. But the real twist is not in the design, it is in the production story. In 1972, Hurricane Agnes flooded Piper's Lock Haven plant, wiping out the Comanche tooling overnight. Rather than rebuild, Piper shifted to the cheaper to make P-28 line and left the Comanche an Orphan. Overnight, a fast, long-legged cruiser became undervalued, simply because the factory was gone. For the savvy buyer, that is an opportunity. The cult following Comanche flyers keeps parts, tips, and upgrades flowing, but you need to be sharp on the pre-buy inspection. Spar and carry through corrosion, gear rigging, and the famously complex fuel system all demand close inspection. But if you want a true 160-knot traveler for the price of a tired Archer, the Comanche 250 is the insider's play. It is not the easy button, but it is the best value muscle you will find from a big brand badge, if you are willing to do your homework. Cessna tried to retire its own king with the 177 Cardinal, a plane designed to make the 172 look and feel old-fashioned overnight. The Cardinal's cantilever wing ditches the lift struts, so you get a panoramic view out the window and a cleaner aerodynamic profile. The cabin is wider, the doors are massive, and sliding into the front seat feels more like stepping into a sedan than squeezing into a phone booth. On paper, the 180 horsepower 177B cruises at 120 to 130 knots, outpacing the average Skyhawk by a solid margin. But the Cardinal never took over the training fleets. Early models had a stabilator, an all-moving tail, that made pitch control livelier than instructors liked. Student pilots, used to the forgiving, nose-heavy 172, found the Cardinal's landing attitude and pitch sensitivity a little too honest. Word spread that it was too sensitive for beginners, so flight schools stuck with the old standby and the Cardinal was quietly sidelined. That reputation lingers, keeping resale prices lower than you would expect for a four-seater with better speed, comfort, and visibility. For a private owner, that is pure opportunity. Parts are easy. Mainstream Cessna suppliers and a dedicated Cardinal Flyers group keep everything moving. The only real pre-buy must is the stabilator rigging. Get a shop that knows the type to check it for perfect balance. Ignore the training market's groupthink, and you get a better Cessna for less money, a pilot's airplane hiding in plain sight. Say the word wood at an airport, and half the crowd will start muttering about termites, rot, or old barn smells. That is why the Bellanca Super Viking is the best deal in the sky that nobody wants to touch, unless they know what they are looking at. Underneath its fabric skin hides a set of laminated spruce spars, sealed and bonded tighter than most pilots' wallets. The Viking is not a relic, it is a 300 horsepower cross-country machine that cruises in the high 170s, sometimes nudging 180 knots, right alongside the V-tail Bonanza, except the Bonanza crowd is paying a nostalgia tax, and you are not. Why does it ride so smooth? Wood absorbs vibration better than thin aluminum, so the ride is almost velvet at speed. Owners will tell you the trick is not avoiding wood, it is knowing how to check it. Smart buyers bring a moisture meter to the pre-buy, probe the spar caps, look for readings in the low teens, tap the glue lines, and walk away from anything soft or suspicious. If the numbers are right and the glue lines are tight, these wings are as bulletproof as anything in this class. The Bellanca Champion Club keeps the knowledge flowing, and specialized shops can rebuild a wing to zero-time standards if needed. The myth of wood fragility is what keeps prices low. For those willing to inspect, not just assume, the Super Viking delivers Bonanza-class speed for a fraction of the price, and a flying experience that is as rare as it is rewarding. The Stinson 108 Voyager stands out as the practical workhorse for pilots who value payload over polish. Its tube and fabric build hides a cabin nearly as spacious as the Cessna 170, with wide doors and a flat floor that make loading straightforward. Short field performance is a given. The 108 rolls confidently onto grass or gravel, carrying a useful load that matches its all-metal rival. Cruise speed settles between 100 and 110 knots, never the fastest, but always capable. The real draw is economic. A solid Stinson 108 usually costs $50,000 to $80,000 less than a comparable Cessna 170, sometimes more if you are open to older fabric or a Franklin engine awaiting overhaul. For backcountry pilots, that price gap means more fuel, more gear, and more adventure for less money. Vintage rules apply. Tailwheel training is required, and crosswind landings demand attention. Pre-purchase inspections focus on fabric age, ultraviolet damage, and tube corrosion, especially near the floor. Indoors, well-kept fabric can last over 20 years, and the steel structure holds up if kept dry. Engine conversions, often to Lycoming, are common, with support from the International Stinson Club, which offers parts and advice from a seasoned community. For those seeking the best payload per dollar in vintage singles, the Stinson 108 delivers. It trades a bit of speed for space, value, and the freedom to land where others cannot. If you're tired of crawling over a front seat or wedging yourself into a flying phone booth, the Commander 112 and 114 are your answer. Forget speed for a moment. These planes are about living well in the air. The cabin is the widest in its class, with 2 real doors that let every passenger board with dignity. No more climbing over seats or apologizing to your spouse for bruised knees. The trailing link landing gear is a pilot's secret. Even if you botch the touchdown, the gear soaks it up, making every arrival look and feel smooth. That is not a gimmick. It is a design borrowed from jets, and it works. Cruise is in the range of 135 to 140 knots, so you are not breaking speed records, but you are not paying for them either. The trade-off? Your passengers are happy, your back is not sore, and your airplane actually looks like it belongs on a business ramp, not a rental line. Maintenance is straightforward, with standard Lycoming engines, conventional systems, and a strong Commander owners group that keeps parts and advice flowing. Pre-buy inspections should focus on gear pivots and door seals, but these are known quantities, not mysteries. The Commander never became a trainer, so you are not bidding against flight schools. You are getting the best comfort per dollar in the market, and you are not paying a logo tax for the privilege. Step up to the ramp and you will spot the Socata TB20 Trinidad by its gull-wing doors, an entrance borrowed from supercars, not school buses. Forget climbing over seats or squeezing through narrow gaps. These doors swing wide, and the cabin welcomes you with sculpted seats and a panel layout that feels more Airbus than antique. The ergonomics are decades ahead of the usual suspects. Controls fall naturally to hand, the side stick like yoke frees up knee room, and the visibility is panoramic. On a cross-country, this is not just a plane, it is a lounge with a view at 160 knots. Under the cowl sits a Lycoming IO540, the same 250 horsepower workhorse found in dozens of American singles. Props and most systems are off the shelf for any United States shop. The myth that you will be stranded waiting for parts is just that, a myth. Some airframe components ship from Europe, and a door hinge might take a few extra weeks if you need a factory original replacement. But TB20 owner forums are packed with hacks and cross-references, and several United States shops keep common bits on the shelf. Engines, props, avionics, those are as American as any Cessna or Piper. The real trick is joining the owner network, where someone is always found a workaround or a stateside stash. There is one non-negotiable. Check those gull-wing door hinges during the pre-purchase inspection. If they are worn or the seals are shot, factor in the weight and the cost. That is the price of entry for a cockpit that feels like a modern import, not a tractor cab. The TB20 never became a trainer, which means you are not bidding against flight schools and you are not paying the Cessna Tax. For the price of a tired Bonanza or an Archer with faded plastic, you get a 160-knot cruiser with ramp presence and comfort that makes the old-school names feel like relics. For pilots who want real value and who are not scared by a French accent on the data plate, the Trinidad is the shrewd buy hiding in plain sight. The Grumman AA1 Yankee is the 2-seat rocket that every Cessna 150 owner wishes they had bought instead. On the ramp, it looks like a toy, short, low, and just a little cocky. Slide into the seat and fire up the 108 horsepower Lycoming, and you are holding the controls of a true hot rod. The AA1 cruises at 115 to 120 knots. That is a full 15 to 20 knots faster than a Cessna 150, with the same fuel burn and a grin that just will not quit. The controls are light and direct. Roll into a turn and the airplane snaps to attention, no lag, no wallow, just crisp response. The wing loading is higher than a 150, which means the ride is smoother in turbulence, but it demands more discipline at low speeds. This is not a trainer's trainer. The stall comes on quickly, with less warning than the mushy Cessna. Overshoot the base to final turn, get sloppy with rudder and aileron, and the AA1 will happily teach you about spins. The accident history is clear. Loss of control in the pattern and botched stalls are the classic mistakes. Insurance companies know it too. Many will not cover primary training in an AA1, or they will demand extra dual instruction before they will sign off a new pilot. For owners who take the time to get type-specific coaching, the safety record improves enough that some insurers offer a 25% discount. But the lesson is simple: this is a pilot's airplane, not a student's classroom. On the used market, AA1s trade for the same money as Cessna 150s, sometimes less. But you are getting a bonded wing sports car instead of a flying lawn tractor. The fun per dollar is unmatched, as long as you respect the speeds and keep your stall workup high. Any smart buyer brings in a mechanic who knows the AA1's control rigging and checks the bond lines for corrosion or delamination before making a deal. For the pilot who wants pure flying joy and is not afraid to train for it, the Yankee is the ultimate contrarian play: maximum thrill, minimal spend, and zero regrets. The Maule M7 ignores the ramp appeal arms race and focuses on what matters: pure utility. For pilots who care more about where they can land than what is painted on the tail, the M7 is the answer. On the used market, it consistently undercuts the Cessna 180 and Cessna 182 by well over $100,000. That is enough to cover an avionics overhaul, a year's worth of fuel, and still leave cash for a float kit. The price gap is not a rounding error, it is a statement. Performance is the M7's entire reason for being. Even loaded, it clears a 50-foot obstacle in about 600 feet. Go light, and you are off the ground in 300 feet or less, matching Super Cub numbers, but with 4 seats and a real cargo hold. Landings are just as short. In Alaska and Idaho, pilots run M7s off sandbars, gravel, and grass strips barely longer than a football field. The Cessna 180 needs nearly twice the runway for the same feat. Big flaps, leading-edge slats, and beefy gear make the Maule the pickup truck of bush planes. Parts support is not a worry. Maule Air in Georgia still builds and ships airframe and landing gear components. The basic design has not changed in decades, and engines and props are standard Lycoming and Hartzell, no rare parts, and no orphaned systems. The owner community is tight-knit, swapping advice and modifications online and at backcountry fly-ins. If you can keep a 60-year-old Cessna running, a Maule will not scare you. Most M7s are tail draggers, so a tailwheel endorsement and respect for crosswinds are required. Pre-buy inspections should focus on fabric, gear legs, and flap rigging, standard checks for a working bush machine. For those who want to haul, camp, fish, or land where others cannot, the Maule M7 is the ultimate value. It is not flashy, it is not famous, but it outworks the Cessna legends for a fraction of the price, function over fashion, and the final word on the Cessna Tax. Across all 10 sleeper planes, one pattern is clear. True aviation value hides where crowd demand is not present. The so-called Cessna Tax is not about safety or engineering. It is a market distortion fueled by flight schools and herd mentality. Smart pilots see past the logo premium and find performance bargains. In aviation, thinking differently is not just thrift, it is how you own more plane for less money. Which Orphan would you trust? Let me know below.